All right, so we are going to switch over to Yannick now. Yannick, I presume you're in your set, and we're
I
making
hope so.
we're making you a co-host. And Laura, if you're listening, yes, I'm recording this locally, and I'll provide it for you guys, and we'll use it, of course, Watchful a little later. So, Yannick, you are now co-host. If you have slides, that's great. If
No,
we're just
you
gonna,
said I should not have slides.
yeah. So for the folks listening, I asked our panelists, our guest speakers, I said, let's just have a casual conversation. You don't need to prepare too much. I didn't want to add any extra burden. After that, some of the guest speakers said, but I have slides. So if you have them, please feel free to show them. You have co-host privileges. But let me introduce you. Yannick and I have been colleagues and friends for many, many years. We both started with professional careers, gave that up to do Joomla and websites, and I guess we haven't really looked back. So I'm really happy to welcome Yannick. He always helps me out when I need his help, and shows up when I need a guest speaker. So welcome, Yannick. You're talking to us today about sitemaps, myths, and realities. This is not an overlap with your talk tomorrow, I don't think. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for inviting me. I'm always up because I don't get invited that often. But thanks anyway. So like you said, I do have slides, but it's mostly to remind me what I wanted to say. So I hope this can be more interactive, like you said, like a casual discussion. So I'm not sure anyone or if folks can raise their hands and or ask questions, but feel free to do so if possible. And maybe Vic, you can relay the questions or the comments, because the for me, the sitemap is an important tool in the SEO toolbox, but most people just kind of overlook it. And so I think it's important. It overlaps a bit. I'll be mentioning sitemaps tomorrow in my talk, but I think it's interesting to just point out at a few things. So I have like 5 items I would like to state, and please react if you feel so. Which are things many users of my extensions come up to and say, but I need to have a sitemap because of this or because of that. And most of the times it's not reality. So I just wanted to list a few things. And the first thing I'd like to say is that, or the first sentence I hear a lot is, well, a sitemap is going to help me rank in Google. So it won't. A sitemap is not something that will help you rank pages of your website in any way. So that's just what it is. And so it's interesting to understand what sitemap is for. Just a word. I'm talking right now about XML sitemap, the kind of thing most people think about when they say sitemap. There are other types of sitemaps, and I'll say a word about that later. But a sitemap is just meant for search engines to figure out what the pages of your site are, and to get a hint of whether these pages, which of the pages on your site are important and which are not. So it's something you tell Google. Most times I will say Google instead of search engines because it's Google. But so by listing a page in a sitemap, you're telling Google, okay, you may not be aware, but there's this page on my site, and you have to pay attention to it. And that's pretty much the extent of what you can do. You're telling them this page is important. You should look at it. That's the only thing you do when you put when you list a page in a sitemap. You're not going to make them rank it higher or anything else. You're just asking them basically go crawl it, analyze it, and hopefully you'll do something with it. But that's the extent of what you do. And so that's already a big tool. But not always. So the second thing I'd like to say about sitemaps, or the second sentence I hear a lot, is I need a sitemap on my site. And from my user space, I would say, most of the times you don't need a sitemap. First of all, small sites basically don't need a sitemap at all. If you read the documentation from Google, the Google documentation on sitemaps, they say that if your site has 500 pages or less, you don't need a sitemap at all.
Yannick, can I jump in?
Sure.
Can we just specify for our users? And of course, if you don't know, Yannick writes SEO software for Joomla.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say that in the intro. Can you make a specification just really quickly, the difference between an HTML sitemap, which I think you're talking about now, and the XML sitemap that you submit in the Search Console? Is that the difference you're talking about?
No, Victor. I'm talking about XML sitemap.
Oh, okay.
And I think I mentioned that earlier. What I'm talking about is XML sitemap, which is the kind of sitemap most people think about.
Right.
A few people think about HTML sitemap, which is a page on our site where you list pages. And I'll mention that at the end. That's one of the additional types of sitemaps that I want to say something about.
Okay.
But no, I'm talking about XML sitemaps that you submit to Google in the Search Console or by other means. And these are the ones that won't help you rank. And these are the ones that for many sites you basically don't need. Wow. Because the first reason is that if your site is small, and I'll get back to that. If your site is small, remember the sitemap is here to tell Google, amongst all the pages of my site, this one's important, this one is important, this one is important. You should crawl them and analyze them. But if your site is small, they don't care about that. They'll just read all of them. And one of the things the sitemap is supposed to solve is that when your site is large and you have tens, hundreds of thousands of pages, millions of pages, it's a trouble for Google to crawl all these pages. So a sitemap is a way to let them focus on things that are important for them, the good pages, and important to you as well. So in reverse, if your site has less than, they list specifically 500 pages and usually up to a couple of thousands or maybe more, basically you don't need a sitemap. Wow. Because your site is so small that they are going to crawl. It's not going to be a trouble for them to crawl everything. Yeah, and Laura Fantastic. Finds that so funny. Sorry.
I just walked across the room carrying a chair behind you.
Anyway, so if you have a small site, basically you don't need that.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip.
So, and the actual Google documentation on sitemaps clearly states if your site has less than 500 pages, you don't need a sitemap. It's written there. If you listen to their podcasts or things like that, you talk to actual Googlers in the time we could talk to them in face to face. They say like 2,000 or 3,000 is a small site, and we just don't bother. We crawl everything we find, and it's used for everything. So another usage, but again, it's for larger sites, but it can help with smaller sites, is when your site has an architectural problem, and there are some pages that cannot be reached through clicking through the sites. There are pages that you want to be indexed and rank for queries, but for some reason people cannot get to them. And if people cannot get them, then search engines cannot get to them, and they are not going to rank them. So one way to work around this is to list these pages in your XML sitemap. So my take on that would be fix the problem. All pages that are interesting to users or to visitors, they should be able to click through to them one way or another. On very large sites, this may happen. It may happen that you can actually click through these pages and reach them, but it requires so many clicks to get there, then there's a chance Google is not going to spend enough time, and then they're not going to go that far into your website, and therefore there are pages that may not be indexed. And that's one of the reasons you would definitely put them in your sitemap. Tell them, that's an important page. You please go and check it out, which they won't always do, but that's a good hint for them.
So an example might be maybe I'm creating hundreds of landing pages a year, and I've got a couple that are really ranking. I really want to rank well, but I can't create 100 links on the main page for all these landing pages. So I'll put that in my XML and make sure Google can see that as a hint that it's a page that should be indexed.
Yeah. Or not everything has to be. It's a good thing. Putting links on the homepage is a good thing. But not everything needs to be linked from the homepage. Maybe you need 2 or 3 clicks from the homepage to reach that page, and that's usually fine. But then, if for some reason, because you have too many nested categories or whatever type of content you may have, maybe you need 5 or 10 clicks to get there, and that starts to be. I have a piece of software which wants to update just right now. Right. Sorry about that. So that might be a significant issue because they are not going to crawl that many nested levels of pages. So again, depends on your site architecture. If you've got 150 pages, but for some strange reason you make people click 10 times to get to a page, then that's going to be okay. They're going to crawl everything. But if your site is larger, then that's good use of a sitemap. So in a sense, again, most people creating Joomla sites are not going to be needing a sitemap. When you need it, though, it's a useful tool.
And it doesn't hurt to have it even on a small site, right?
Sorry?
It doesn't hurt to have it on a small site.
No, it doesn't hurt. But, well, the thing is, I'm not sure. Yeah, it will link to what I said later. But the thing is, with SEO, and that's something I will say tomorrow again, is that it's usually better to do nothing than do wrong. And a lot of people have a tendency, for some reason, to do wrong. Like in that instance, for instance, you're going to put wrong pages into your sitemap. You're going to list in your sitemap pages which have a canonical to another page, or you're going to put pages in your sitemap which are blocked by robots.txt, or that sort of thing. And so you're telling Google to list. You give it the address of the page, and that this page has a canonical to another page. So that first URL should not be in the sitemap in the first place because it's not canonical. It's not interesting. Google doesn't want to see it. And so basically you are invalidating your sitemap. They cannot trust your sitemap to get valid information from it. So better if you have a perfect sitemap, yes, you can add it to your small site. That's fine. It doesn't hurt as long as there's no mistake in the sitemap. And that's the title of the third sentence I hear a lot. Doing a sitemap is just a matter of listing all the pages of my website in my XML sitemap. And normally you're not going to want to list all the pages on your site in your sitemap. In a sense, you want to list all the important pages. So that's going to be all the pages which are canonical. If they're the canonical to another page, you don't want it there. If it's blocked by no index, you absolutely do not want to be listed in the sitemap. Pages like contact pages, login pages, all the duplicated pages, and often all the pages which have a redirect, you don't want to list that. You want to list only the targets, the final target of the redirect.
Yannick, because
sometimes
Robin asked the question: is it the same with the schema? No schema is better than an incorrect schema.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything in SEO, in my mind, that's a personal opinion, but in my mind, everything in SEO has to be right. If you don't know, if you're not sure, don't do it. It's better to let them, Google or Bing, let them handle that than providing them with wrong information. Always. Same for schemas and same for, in my mind, it's really down to that. Don't do things if you're not sure it's okay. Obviously, it's pretty hard to be sure because they don't tell you exactly what you should be doing, but they give enough hints in my mind.
4-minute warning, Yannick.
Sorry? What?
4-minute warning.
Okay. Let's move on then. I need an image sitemap. That's one. We are entering here 5 different types of sitemaps. The XML sitemap is one thing, but you got image sitemap. You got video sitemaps, HTML sitemap. I'll say more about that if I have enough time. So an image sitemap may be the exception to the rule. An image sitemap is an XML sitemap as well, where you list only images and you tell Google and Bing, on this particular page, I have this image and this image and this image. So the goal is the same. List in the sitemap the important images, the nice images, the one you're not going to list there your logo, because your logo is on every page. So you don't want that in the sitemap, and it doesn't matter because your logo is not going to rank against your competition, right? You want images that have value being listed there. But contrary to all other type of sitemaps, image sitemaps can actually fix a problem. Oftentimes, people have things like galleries of images, and these are oftentimes powered with JavaScript. And many times, what's in the actual HTML page is only a thumbnail, a small version of the image, and you click on it, and you get the full version. Or you click to the next image, and you get the next image. And so that can be a problem, depending on how it's done by the extension doing this. It can be a problem because the search engine can only be aware either of the thumbnail, or sometimes not aware at all of the fact there is actually an image. Despite search engines being able to run JavaScript, they don't click buttons. So oftentimes you might hide images, and they may not be aware of the images on your site, like sites like architecture sites or builders, with construction builders with pictures of houses they have built, that sort of thing. So I have seen that a few times. And when that happens, a good way to work around that, the best way is to fix the problem with a portfolio or gallery extension. But a good workaround for that is to list the big image, the good image in the image sitemap. Okay, I've seen Robin saying she was not aware of the fact there's an image sitemap. It's kind of the same thing. It's just an XML sitemap, but inside the URL tag, you actually list the images inside. So it can be a separate file. It can be the same file. In my extension, for instance, for SEO, I put everything in the same file, but you can have different files as well. So because
One minute.
Oh, okay. What else? I need an HTML sitemap. That's also something I've heard a lot, and I've been asked, why does for SEO doesn't create an HTML sitemap? In my opinion, you don't really need an HTML sitemap. Again, it's not a ranking factor. It's not something that will help you rank in any way. There's been articles on that, and it's been confirmed. So it's not going to help you rank in any way. And for discovering pages and telling Google which pages are the good ones, then an XML sitemap is much more efficient. And as for your users, people tell me, but an HTML sitemap is good because my users like to find their way around with that, and it's good, like a map, basically, of the site. Maybe I don't find that. I have not found that many people using a sitemap in that way. An HTML sitemap, a real page on their site that shows the site architecture. I would argue that it's probably better to improve your search function, or to improve your navigation, your menus and things like that, than waste time on building an HTML sitemap. So that's why I don't do it. And one last slide, but I don't show you, but I have them actually. There are HTML sitemaps, news sitemaps, images sitemaps, video sitemaps, geo sitemaps that don't exist anymore, and AMP sitemaps, AMP exploited mobile pages sitemaps that never existed. It's just an illusion, but I don't have time to talk about that. So if you have questions. you don't have time for that either, I guess.
Let's move the questions to the chat area, but I'll just say, of course, thank you, Yannick, for showing up today. But what I really appreciated, and obviously, some people may know that we worked together for many years. Your software has always been very opinionated. So you've done the research. You said, this is not going to help me rank, so I don't need it. You're not building it because X number of your customers or potential customers have asked for it. You take a very firm approach on those things, and you don't necessarily see that a lot, but I think it keeps your software tighter and more efficient. So I appreciate that. It took me a few years maybe, but I appreciate that.